Thank you all for joining us today for The Old Way of Tasking is Dead. And today we're going to be talking about the latest COTS enterprise task management innovation from DTech Apps called TaskerAI. So our firm was launched roughly around 2019, born from a request from ServiceNow to build the application that we'll be talking about today, which is Tasker, an enterprise task management solution that bolts right on top of ServiceNow. And so with the development of Tasker came about a product that maybe some of you have already seen our events on, Doc Integrator. Doc Integrator is a product we use for connecting ServiceNow to Microsoft SharePoint. There's a ton of resources online today. So if you haven't seen a webinar on Doc Integrator, please go to our YouTube channel and you can watch one of those videos there from a recent webinar. But with that being said, since we're here to talk about Tasker, which is our flagship product, we built this with ServiceNow to help address a need in one of our federal clients who needed an enterprise task management solution. And the way ServiceNow out of the box operates, Tasker needed to be developed to address the customer's needs. When we think about tasking, whenever anybody has something to review, any sort of ad hoc request, an audit, maybe sometimes there's something critical that needs to be taken on. Maybe it's even cross-departmental, where it's not just your team and your department, but it involves a tiger team of people across a number of departments. Tasking is always a challenge to manage. And most people today, when it comes to task management, they may use some handful of rudimentary desktop tools or cloud solutions, but those are designed for the user, for the individual. And they don't really span the enterprise, where using a tiger team coming from people outside of different departments, interacting with it, the management of that information and the working and collaboration is often a broken process, disjointed. And probably one of the biggest problems throughout that, whenever a task comes in, is for those who assign the task, the management of monitoring it and ensuring that a request is taken from the idea being born to the idea being delivered. And so with that, we find ourselves in a world where tools like Tasker are absolutely necessary, so that we don't lose things in email, so we don't lose things on spreadsheets. And when we think about what is it that makes tasking so critical, think about this. When you're not managing your task, when you're not managing the work, almost 60% of those projects will fail just because you missed a deadline, or you didn't set clear objectives, or information that was supposed to be captured when the task was assigned wasn't, but it was captured later on, or through different people as different people got involved. So there's a breakdown in clear information between all parties. And even at that, when that breakdown in communication happens, it is usually what causes most of those tasks to fail almost 70% of the time. And let's face it, when it comes to workflow versus the way tasks move, workflow is procedural. It's step by step. It has a beginning, it has an end. There's an order to it. But tasks aren't. Tasks are a little chaotic, a little nebulous. Almost anything can happen when it comes to just getting work done. And so with that, if for those who have tried to use a traditional workflow to manage a task, it's rigid, and either the task itself breaks or the workflow breaks down because these new variables that get introduced into the process, they may require someone to try to make a change to the workflow. And whenever changes are made to a workflow, whenever a developer is brought in to make a change to something, sometimes that work that's in process is lost. Sometimes that workflow breaks down. Sometimes you can't send work back to be redone. And as a result, workflows just don't work when it comes to task flow. So enter TaskerAI and our commercial off-the-shelf enterprise task management solution that we have built exclusively to bolt on to your ServiceNow environment, and any ServiceNow environment, ITSM, ITAM, ITOM, SPM, you name the ServiceNow environment that you have implemented, or multitude of them, Tasker works with it. So what we're going to show today and what we're going to talk about today is what we're doing with AI-led tasking, being able to have AI read emails, build out comprehensive multi-tiered task trees in just a second, being able to execute and set up a dynamic execution pattern where parallel tracks can work side by side, something you just can't do in workflow. And even more so, to be able to do it without coding, no developer needed. There's no need to initiate an IT department help desk request in order to get a task flow built. Anybody who knows how to use a mouse should be able to build a task. And furthermore, at the top, when tasks are assigned, it's accountable to somebody. There's a manager waiting for information. There's a manager asking for updates. Updates and requests for updates takes time. So being able to provide a comprehensive dashboard in which people can see exactly what's happening with their team. Do they need to reassign a task? Has somebody left? Did somebody get ill? This ability to move work around from person to person is critical for an effective manager to work with a variety of people on their teams. The more nebulous and dynamic our teams become, the more critical it is for a manager to have this type of control over work requests.
Today, we're going to quickly walk through a scenario that happens in basically every organization. So some sort of urgent task kicks off. So this could be like a compliance review cycle, an important directive. It could be an audit, something like that. There's this hard deadline, and people across the enterprise, amongst multiple departments, they all need to contribute. So the question is, how do you coordinate all of that without it turning into a bunch of emails, a bunch of spreadsheets, a mess of version conflicts? So how do we avoid that communication breakdown that DC mentioned earlier, which is, side note, a good Led Zeppelin song. So what you're going to see is how Tasker handles that. So from the moment an email hits an inbox all the way through to, say, a digitally signed document or attestation. And whether you work for a federal body or a private organization, the problem here is the same, even if the trigger and the language are different. So Tasker is an enterprise task management COTS solution. It's built on ServiceNow. What's key here is that Tasker is not linear workflow. Workflow tends to crumble under certain requirements like parallel tasking or even sequential dependencies or sequential tasking, dynamic reassignment on the fly, organizational hierarchy. And these are all things that are native to Tasker. And the other piece that you'll see throughout is Doc Integrator, as DC mentioned. So, and that's our SharePoint integration layer. So documents stay in SharePoint and they're surfaced in ServiceNow within the task. And users never have to leave the platform to access these important documents or files or artifacts. And signatures can happen on PDF documents natively without the document ever leaving your SharePoint environment. So here is the scenario that we'll be walking through. So let's say that I work for some type of organization called the Meridian Group, and our outside counsel, they send an email requesting an annual compliance review, which triggers Tasker. And so that is 6 different work streams, multiple departments, and one parent task to track everything. And I'm the task manager here, and I'm working in the Tasker portal. So that's what you can see here on your screen. So this is a single pane of glass view of all tasks that are important to me, as well as a landing page to navigate the Tasker solution. So if we're thinking about emails, I can navigate to my email box from the badge, this mail badge at the top right of the screen, after seeing that an email came through. So I'll just go ahead and click it, and you can see that we've actually pulled in all of these emails from my email box and have it directly into ServiceNow. And even the attachments related to those emails are ingested by Tasker, and it's available for me while I'm working here in ServiceNow. So instead of manually reading, let's say this email that just came through, manually reading all of this and getting the different task names one by one, we can pull that directly into Tasker using TaskerAI, and I can simply click Task It here. And I can choose that we want the email body to define the task. And I can also choose these different attachments, these documents in a PDF document that were attached to the email. I can choose to attach it to the task tree, keep it in SharePoint, and relate it to the task. And so from there, I can go ahead and click Task It. And TaskerAI, sorry, is reading the email. It's reading the task names, the assigned offices, the user assignments, the structure of the task, and it builds the full task tree here in seconds. So no manual entry here. And prior to kicking off the task, I can even make edits. So if I want to change the title of this task, or I want to change the assignment of this task, I can do that here in this draft state, ensuring that the task tree is accurate before it's notifying all of the parties involved. And we can also see, if we want to get a quick view of the timeline, we can get this Gantt chart view of the different tasks that were created. So we went from an email and an inbox to a fully structured routed task tree in just seconds. There wasn't any help desk ticket needed. There wasn't a workflow engineer needed. There was not an email chain that was broken. That is the entire triage bottleneck of important tasks coming through eliminated. And once everything looks good, I can go ahead and click on create the task to actually create the task, of course, and I can open up that task tree so that we can see what was built. And so this is an actual view of a task within the system. We can see this is the exact tree that was created here with the correct task names, the correct structure, assignments, information, and important documentation, all generated from a single email. Now let's take a quick peek under the hood and see a key differentiator of Tasker, which is the organizational hierarchy here. So here is my organization structure. You can see Meridian Group here as the top organization here. And Tasker can model even the most complex organizations. It can support sprawling layers and even nonlinear structures. And one of the things that sets Tasker apart from other workflow tools is that Tasker runs on this organizational hierarchy. So that means that tasks, important artifacts, approvals, assignments, all of these are tied to the structure of the organization. And it's easy to set up. So it's actually really simple and quick to import a structure from, say, a spreadsheet or an Excel file and get going immediately. Tasker is really all about that quick time to value. Additionally, it's easy to configure and to maintain. So you don't need to wait for IT to make changes. If a new office is opened or a new employee needs to be added to a team, users with admin access can make changes on the fly to keep it up to date. Now, for example, let's say I need to add a new team to support a new request coming in under the human resources organization there. So I can actually simply click on the plus of the parent organization that I want to add a team or an organizational unit to. I can just click that plus and I can add in information for the team or the organizational unit that I want to add. Let's say this is a learning and development team that we want to add, and we'll just add an abbreviation there. And it's really as simple as that. I can just save that OU, and you can see that the organizational structure has dynamically added that team right there. And the hierarchy has updated on the fly. So the hierarchy here is there to support your organization's real structure, not to force you into a rigid template or workflow. It adapts with the changing landscape of your organization. And now let's take a look back at the task that we built with TaskerAI. So here is that task. It's a couple of days down the road, though, so you can see we have a couple of tasks either completed or accepted. So let's do a quick overview of the task tree and the screen that you're seeing. So this is a task tree view for a task in the system. At the left is the parent task, as you can see, with subtasks branching off to the right. This task, of course, has a few subtasks. These tasks can be complex. They can be extremely simple. They can have hundreds of subtasks. They can have no subtasks. Tasks can be sequential or parallel, and that is denoted by this number right here to the left of the task. So you can see that these are all subtasks that are the first step here that need to be completed first. And then this last subtask here, you can see with this 2, it is a subtask in a waiting state, meaning that it will only trigger, the assignee will only get a notification once all of the previous subtasks are complete. And this means that subtasks can have dependencies for activating in that regard. And tasks are also color coded, for quick visibility into their states and to their statuses. So there's a key on the right of the screen here, and we can see whether a subtask has been accepted, assigned, rejected, work in progress, all quickly visible from the colors of the task tree. And tasks that are unassigned or are waiting on other subtasks are flagged with this warning icon that we see here for visibility. Now, intuitively, each task can be worked on directly from the tree. So as you can see here, I can hover over a subtask and I can edit the details of the task. I can edit the assignment. I can edit the suspense of the subtask, and I can even create subtasks on the fly directly from the tree. So we really built Tasker with the user in mind. This allows the solution to be completely dynamic, and it adjusts to real processes and real missions on the fly. And if a routing path is broken or needs attention, users can easily make adjustments and fixes without the need for restarting the entire task or asking an engineer to help. So for example, we look at this flag task here. This is unassigned. So with a custom tool or a workflow, this would cause a break, right? This would need to be fixed by IT or a workflow engineer. They might have to restart the entire workflow and edit the assignments. But with Tasker, we simply click on the person icon of this subtask. We find the assigned member that we need to assign this task to, and we simply just click assign. And you can see the subtask has been dynamically updated with the correct assignment there. And additionally, say we need an extra review subtask branching off of this IT security and infrastructure audit task here. So again, no need to message IT. There's no need to wait on a fix. We can add a subtask ourselves simply by clicking this plus icon. We can change the task name to say review in this case, and we will assign it to myself, and we'll go ahead and create that task. And you can see again on the fly, we have created a new subtask right from this task tree. So one of the keys here, something that I think is very important, is that Tasker is not workflow. So workflow, it's a predefined path. If something breaks in the middle, the whole thing stalls, and someone has to go find an engineer to fix it. While Tasker is a dynamic task tree, the task manager stays in control at all times. I can reassign, restructure, add subtasks, all of it on the fly without any technical intervention. Additionally, subtasks can be assigned to different offices or components, as you can see here, reaching across the organization. Thanks to the organizational hierarchy, here we've assigned different components to each subtask so they can all collaborate on the end goal. And of course, the structure is flexible. So if a new team or a new user needs to be added, those authorized users can do it quickly from the organizational hierarchy screen that we saw earlier. And finally here, of course, Tasker works in tandem with Doc Integrator. So Doc Integrator's DTech App's SharePoint integration layer, it embeds as a tab within the task. In this case, if we just scrolled out here, these are the details of the task, as well as some tabs on requests, emails, statuses, action log, and so on. But we can click on the Shared Documents tab and look at Doc Integrator here. So these are documents that we're taking from the ingested email attachments, and they were uploaded directly to SharePoint and related to this task. So Doc Integrator stores all important shared documentation to those with permissions to access on the SharePoint side. And even though those documents look as though they are in ServiceNow, they're in fact completely in SharePoint and serviced in ServiceNow. So I say we take the best of both worlds, the best of both tools in this regard. We have ServiceNow's user management, its user interface, its workflow, but we leverage SharePoint's document management, versioning, storage, and security. And of course, users inherit those SharePoint permissions, so users only see what they have access to. And keeping documents in SharePoint, it allows us to do a lot of things here. It allows users to collaborate on documents from within ServiceNow. So they can simply click on the document to be taken directly to SharePoint Online, where they can leverage all of the O365 online functionality, such as version history, so we can catch up here, we can comment, we can highlight certain things and add a comment here for other users to see, and even leverage things like Copilot for the summaries or for any other prompts that we want to prompt with Copilot if we have those licenses. Now, this collaboration is great because with base ServiceNow, this is impossible. ServiceNow attachments are not living documents. To edit, users need to download, edit from their desktop, rename, re-upload, delete the old attachment. So users cannot work together in real time when it comes to base ServiceNow. It's all manual and it's prone to errors. Now, additionally, on top of that, Doc Integrator can perform actions on these documents from ServiceNow, actions like moving the document, downloading these documents or these files, sending for review, and even generating AI summaries. So we can even check that out simply by right-clicking and clicking this summarize option here. So just like the email to task generation at the beginning, we plug into your AI tool of choice and we prompt it for summaries that are ready for viewing and for downloading on these important documents. And that's just one example, but whatever prompt you'd like, we could set that as an action for these SharePoint files. And finally, digital signatures can be collected from ServiceNow with Doc Integrator. So importantly, one of these subtasks here, it requires me to digitally sign a PDF before continuing in the compliance review process. So I can simply scroll down, find the document that I need to sign, and I can open it in my desktop app here, where the document is opened in the user's PDF reader of choice. And in this case, I'm using the free Adobe Reader application. So importantly, the document is staying in SharePoint, but we are allowed to sign in place in SharePoint here by adding my digital signature. I can just click on the digital signature box and use the digital signature certification that I have saved. For federal customers, this supports PIV and CAC credentials as well. But it's really as simple as that. Once I make that signature, I can simply exit out of Adobe here. And the document is now updated in SharePoint, meaning that the digital signature here is reflected in Doc Integrator in SharePoint for any user with access to see. So in closing, we saw an email hit an inbox. TaskerAI built the task tree. There were 6 different work streams that all ran across the organization. Documents all stayed in SharePoint the entire time, and the final signed document never left the compliant document repository. And all of that happened without a help desk ticket, without a workflow engineer, and without restarting a single process when something changed mid-flight. So that is Tasker. It's purpose-built for the way that organizations actually work, not the way that workflow diagrams assume they work. And that's about it that I wanted to show. I'll turn it back over to DC to close out here.
Before we completely wrap this up, we do have some questions in the queue. And I think the first one we'll address, it asks, can you assign to a group rather than just a person or a team member? So Josh, if you want to talk a little bit about task assignment.
Yeah, sure. You can definitely assign to a group or those organizational units that we mentioned before. You can assign a task to that organizational unit and have everyone within that unit have access to it. And then they would need to have an individual user actually accept that task, but you can have the base assignment to be for a group and then have an individual pick that up.
Let's see, the next question asks, how does your AI prevent it from creating incomplete or incorrect tasks from the emails?
With AI, I think, as everyone kind of is navigating this AI landscape, it's never going to be perfect, right? There's always going to need some human intervention. And that's why we give the ability to edit the task after it's been created in a draft state. So we've found with our tests that it very often picks up all the right information, the right task names, the right assignments, and so on. But there's always that step of human intervention just to make sure everything is complete and everything is accurate before sending it out to the organization. And we use your AI model of choice. So if you have a AI model personally that you've been using that has been very accurate with your organization, with the type of work that you use, then we plug directly into that so we can get the most accuracy available.
That actually ties into our next one. What AI platforms are you currently?
Yeah, we support any AI model. We plug into it. We make that connection with your model and we kick out the prompts to them. In this demo, we were using Claude, I believe, but we can really plug into, if you have those APIs to connect to that AI model, we can leverage that model.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know that we've tested Number, Gemini. Obviously, we've been showing from the doc integrator side, integrating with Copilot as well. If you're just going to use the ServiceNow AI, we can work with that. Um, Here's an interesting question. So to clarify, Tasker AI can be fully integrated with the Power Platform and the Dataverse.
We've got the ability to kind of pull an app apart and look at all the components of it and build a template or a task tree based on what we can unpack in a Power App. So if that's the question, a little bit would be looking at each Power App and taking them and pulling them apart and saying, oh, yep, that plugs in this way and creates this task tree. If the question is, do we connect into Microsoft? We do use Power App capability. What normally happens is we're pushing a file in, or we do have some things that we do like create document set and different things on the SharePoint side that can trigger Power Apps. So just depending on, what the actual need is, we would take the requirements apart and, show you how you can most likely just configure capabilities that we have to integrate with the Power App.
Yeah, and we do have a few clients, especially on the federal side, where they're using custom apps, some of them built out in SharePoint and other Microsoft apps that are plugging into Tasker, because the people who have been using those apps don't want to switch from the world and interface they're using. But everybody downstream, all the subordinates and everybody else throughout the organization is on Tasker. We are currently deploying ITSM, and it's been a while. How long will it take for Tasker to deploy?
Generally, the thing that you do with Tasker, you set up your organizational chart, and as soon as your organizational chart is set up, you can start tasking. So if you have an understanding of all the people and offices that you plan to put in, we can ingest, we can map to other things, but generally once you set that up, people can immediately begin tasking each other and you can start tracking it. Templates are really task trees, so if you can build a set of tasks, you can build a template. So you don't have to build templates to get started with Tasker. Unlike workflow, where you have to understand the flow or the application to move things around, with Tasker, you can just start creating tasks and working them together. And so it's a pretty short period of time, and it all really depends on your organizational size. We've stood up people in a couple of weeks at the most. Like if it's a small, I say small, like 500 to 2,500, and they know their organizational structure, we can stand that up really quickly. If it's, tens of thousands, then it's really going to be, do you have a good pattern for what you're, for who maps to what office that we can ingest? And even then, we can do it pretty quickly if you have that mapped out well.
Yeah, traditionally, a number of people in ServiceNow, if they've got an implementation that's going to last a long time and the customer needs to see value right away while the ServiceNow applications are being built out, we usually come in and then the Tasker can be set up really quickly in comparison. Just depends on the complexity of your organization. So it can be.
I think it's a good point just for me to emphasize too, DC. Like when you're standing up ITSM as a capability, it's an ITIL 4, right? So it itself is trying to map out your entire help organization, and there are rules that you follow in order to hit SLAs. And help desk is a really regulated thing, and you have to turn things around in a certain way, and you have to all of these workflows that are ITIL 4 workflows have to be mapped into your organization. So you kind of have to go flow by flow, figure out which groups map to what in order to get started. So even though the workflows are all built for you, you still have to kind of map into that. And so with us, it's really an org structure based management, task management capability. So you don't have to worry about the 18 different flows, or we do this flow this way and that flow that way. Like you can just stand up your org and get going.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. Next question. We have a number of people using Teams Planner. How do we migrate them into TaskerAI?
You could create a spreadsheet on the planner and then suck it in. And as long as the email addresses that you're using inside of ServiceNow match the email addresses that you're using inside of Teams, it's going to just map right in. So yeah, great question.
Some of the key things that we haven't sort of brought up is there are a number of companies where you have an application, say maybe overpaying for some Jira functionality, or different departments are on different platforms from Trello and such. And if you're managing an IT department and trying to control IT spend and try and control IT support, and everybody is on a mishmash of a potpourri of systems, then using a Tasker, first of all, from a cost-effective standpoint, it's very cost-effective. It also exists on many of your, for those of you in any sort of federal or state entity, it is on a number of different contract vehicles there, so you can easily reach out to your rep to get pricing, or as well just contact Brian. But you would end up finding that Tasker, if you're already using ServiceNow, you can deploy Tasker across the enterprise, control your task management solutions, put them all together under one umbrella, under the control of IT and the ServiceNow team. And then from there, not have to worry about supporting a variety of different task management tools. And instead, for less than what all those other tools are, especially if they're billing them back into your IT department and you're suddenly responsible for those charges, is a great way to take control of that. Give everybody a very effective, and at that, with the AI integration, it's far more secure because you're controlling the ability for it to connect to your inbox versus allowing a third-party solution, potentially through a unauthorized Zapier or Make scenario, to connect to their inbox to reach out to a cloud solution. This is going to bring that security and everything in-house. So, and then finally, if you are still using SharePoint on-prem, the Doc Integrator integration feature works with both SharePoint 365 and SharePoint on-premise. As a matter of fact, Doc Integrator is the only way if you're going to integrate with legacy on-premise solutions. Doc Integrator is the one tool that will do it for you. Just to plug Doc Integrator again for a minute there. But with that, thank you again. Thanks to Josh and Rob for presenting today and answering questions. And thank you to everybody for taking valuable time out of your day to join us. With that, that concludes today's webinar. Thank you all for joining.